And we're here with Brodie Sharpe. He's a physiotherapist and host of Run Smarter podcast. Brodie, welcome to the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Happy to be on. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I want to start with the question that I start with for people who are fitness experts, nutrition experts, doctors, so forth, which is, what time is it where you are right now, and what have you put into your body?
As in put into my body this morning.
All day.
Yep. So it is 9 a.m. here in sunny Melbourne, Australia, and I have started my day with an orange and a muesli bar, just like a nut bar to start my day.
Any water or coffee?
Oh, plenty of water. I don't drink coffee, but I do take my time. Well, I do recognize the importance of drinking water, so I have a lovely filtered water beside me.
Nice. Any supplements or vitamins or anything in the morning?
I have taken my 2 fish oil tablets, and that's all. That's usually all I take in terms of supplements or vitamins.
Got it. Okay. And I realized that did you actually go for a run right before jumping on the podcast with me?
Correct. I have been managing an injury at the moment, so I did a 25-minute bike ride and a 20-minute run before jumping on. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Nice. I want to start with running. Let's talk about running. Let's talk about running.
Sure.
It's cool because this podcast, all 303 episodes of this podcast, well, by the time this may be up to 310 or so. It really sort of started with its previous form. The podcast host was a guy named Ryan Muncie, and he owned a CrossFit gym. And for the folks that have stuck around since the Ryan Muncie days, there used to be a major focus in like athletic performance, specifically like, high exertion, physical performance. So crossfitting, marathons, triathlons, and running is obviously a part of that. And so it's cool to go back to that a little bit, because I haven't done like a workout style podcast in a while. And I'm also struck by I got baggage, I guess, around running.
Okay.
I've got baggage around it. I grew up, a pretty talented soccer player. I played for the Olympic Development Program and went to college and played soccer. And I'm a mesomorph, so I'm sort of, I'm in the middle, but I put on muscle pretty easily. And in my younger days, I'd put on fat pretty easily too if I wasn't eating right. And running has never come easy for me. It was always a strain. It was, I got Osgood Slaughters in my knee when I was like 12 years old. I've dealt with tendinitis issues and feet issues, and running was a means to an end. And so the idea of running for fun, the idea of running as a recreation, specifically to just get out and just, get some miles in, I'm a little averse to. So simultaneously, one of my best friends, who has never been he's probably going to listen to this, so I probably shouldn't talk too much shit about him. He's never been like an elite athlete, but he has fallen in love with running recently. And he found a guy on TikTok and hired him as his running coach. And he loves it. He has found his thing, and he's lost a bunch of weight. He's in the best shape of his life. And I still don't get it.
Okay.
So I would love to hear why running is a good idea. Why pounding the pavement in a repetitive motion is a good idea for someone who wants to have high levels of fitness. Give me the pitch on why running is a good idea.
Try and convert you. We'll see.
Yes, please.
I'd say like running maybe not be for everyone. If you don't enjoy it, don't persist with it. There's plenty of other cardio options out there, but I would say when it comes to like runners do get injured. Runners get injured so often, and it's usually due to training errors, like doing too much too soon or like exceeding your capacity to adapt. If someone is just starting to run and they're not enjoying it, they're out of breath, they're like keeled over, hands on knees, like struggling to breathe, or is getting shin splints or getting like foot pain, in most cases, they've probably just started off going too fast, doing too much too soon, or not integrating enough of like a slow adaptation process. If there's, let's just say, if someone started to run, they're like, okay, I want to fully commit just to see if I'm into it. Let's just see, maybe I catch the bug, maybe not. They start running 3 times a week and they're just like totally exhausted the whole entire time. Mistakes that they make is, one, they're probably running too fast because they think they want to get that workout, especially those who are gym goers and used to feeling the burn or like really putting in intense workouts. You're going to be pounding the pavement way too much and with too much force that your body isn't used to, and then it starts breaking down. It usually takes probably about 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes more, before runners actually learn to start running slow and realize the benefits of running slow, because it is a patient process. The body does tremendous things with adapting to the load that you put it through, but you need that patience and you need the sometimes correct guidance in order to adapt and build up. So that's when people usually catch the bug, when they adapt enough that they can reach like a steady state of running where it doesn't feel like they're constantly out of breath or their legs are burning. I know when I first started running, after every single run, my calves were just so tight. They were like rocks and they were burning for 2 days afterwards. But I recognized to run slow. I recognized to walk run a lot of the time. And then just as the months went on, I achieved this steady state where I could run continuously at a slow pace, but I could just keep going. I didn't feel like I was getting tired. I didn't feel like my legs were burning and my calves weren't as tight or sore afterwards, because my body just adapted. And I didn't get to this point where I developed an injury. Well, I've developed heaps of injuries since, but I didn't get to the point where I was discouraged because my body was breaking down. I was actually getting encouraged because my body was adapting and building up to the environment that I put it through. And so much can be said for gym goers. And if someone started CrossFit and then started, say, doing cleans and started getting shoulder pain, they're like, no, it's not for me. Well, you probably need to work on technique. You probably need to start a lot lighter. You probably need to address position. You probably need to slowly build yourself up in order to adapt to the process. I know when I started CrossFit, I had shoulder pain for the first couple of weeks just because of the positions they were in, and all it took was a bit of me getting used to being in those positions, and then I was totally fine. The same can be said for anything that you try. If you have a history of tendon issues or foot issues or Osgood-Schlatter's disease and all these sort of things, then we do need to tailor your introductory into running a little bit differently. Perhaps we go with some different shoes or go with certain terrain. We make sure that you don't increase your speed. We make sure that we're taking your time with running up hills. But that's when it kind of gets into the really nitty gritty if you do need that tailored advice. But for most runners or those who want to start running, it's all about starting slow, trusting the process, making sure you do some walk runs if you're not used to running too much, and just learning to slow down and not just do this huge, intense pounding the pavement every step that you take.
Yeah. Is that a common thing that people feel like, I'm not getting a good enough workout at this slower running pace, I just need to pick it up, and then that's where things get hairy?
Yeah. And when it comes to 80% of the injuries that are developed from running related injuries, it's due to training errors. It's due to doing too much too soon, running too fast too soon, or having like a drastic change in your training, like a drastic change in shoes or a drastic change in terrain, or an under recovery component, either overtraining or under recovery, and kind of the imbalance of that equation. But I have runners talk to me being like, when I first started running, I believed that I needed to hit the ground harder because that's what running is. It's where the benefits of running come in. I'm not a runner if I'm not hitting the pavement harder. And if I know anything about running injuries, it's the total opposite. We want to try and avoid that hard footfall. And if you are wanting a more intense workout and they feel like, running slow just isn't doing it for me, Perhaps once you build up a nice base where you've got a really nice foundation, that's when you can start implementing higher intense sessions. So people do say hill repeats. Some people do this interval training where they're walking for a couple of minutes or doing a slow run for a couple of minutes, but then doing 30 seconds to 60 seconds of intense running, like kind of close to a sprint, and then backing off again, doing repeats of that. Others tend to try they push themselves for like a time trial. So they'll say, let's see how far I can get in 20 minutes, or let's see what my 5K PB can be. Let's see what my half marathon PB can be. But you do need a really strong base. You need a foundation fitness before you can start tackling any of those. Your body needs to get used to those speeds and those, generating those loads in order to not break down.
Yeah. It sounds confusing to me. It sounds like there's so many different things. There's so many different variables. You just rattled off, 8 different things that you need to consider as you're introducing yourself, or perhaps reintroducing yourself to a running practice. And we're talking about shoes, we're talking about inclines and declines, foot striking, distance, speed, all these things. And as I'm using my friend as an example, he was really diligent about trying to go slow and start slow and do it the right way so that he could do it for a while. And sure enough, developed a knee injury that kind of sidelined him. And so what are some ways that people can start slow and because what doesn't elude me, what is obvious to me is lifting heavy things is good for you, right? Lifting heavy things is it's good. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Walking long distances at slow paces, we know, is really good for our bodies. And, if we were chasing an antelope, or we had to, run after a caribou or run away from a warring tribe, we needed to be able to run effectively and carry it. So from that aspect, it seems to me like it is a reasonable and logical thing to be good at, to be interested in, because it's part of the way that our bodies had developed. But where do you start for somebody who's in relatively decent shape, or maybe even somebody that's not in great shape but wants to get running? What's the first couple of things that they should do?
Yeah, good question. And it can be complicated, but it can also be very simple. I throw together a few variables that may complicate it a lot. And that's why the Run Smarter podcast was born, because I did recognize when I was seeing runners in my clinic that I was constantly educating them on a lot of concepts, and recognize there was a lot of misconceptions and a lot of just confusion around running, how to run smarter. So that's why the birth of the podcast was there. But it can be very simple. There are apps out there and training programs that can make things extremely simple. If you're not a runner, and you want to start with basics, there's several apps out there. The Couch to 5K app is a very common one that people often use, and it starts off with some very simple questions. It'd be like, okay, what's your previous experience as a runner? What's your previous injury history? And just getting a couple of baseline characteristics about you. And then once it starts to learn more about you, it gives you a starting point. Like your first run, this is what you need to do. And a lot of it is walk run to start with, and it's very low amounts, but you just follow this audio guided program that says, okay, now it's time to run. And then you keep running. Okay, now it's time to walk. And then you just follow that. I think there's a few intensity cues in there to it'd be make sure that you can still whistle, or make sure you can still talk to the person next to you comfortably, or make sure a few of those intensity cues to make sure you're not overdoing it. But then you go the next day and it tells you to do a little bit more. And then you go the next day, it tells you a little bit more. And then it gives you a rest day. And then you're just essentially just following that, and you're just adapting as you're following that program. So if you really wanted to simplify it, if you really wanted to just start somewhere, that would be my best guidance. If someone wants to create something on their own, then just start off with what I call the embarrassingly slow pace, or the embarrassingly slow distance, and then just build up from there. Make sure that you're not overdoing it within your sessions, you're fairly recovered, because you can run, if it's at a low intensity, you can run 4 times a week, and you should be able to negotiate that. However, what people tend to do is overdo things or want to get a workout, and they run for 30 minutes. They're feeling exhausted the next day or the next couple of days, their legs are quite sore, and they're just recovering for 2 or 3 days, and they can only run twice a week because the body needs time to recover. Whereas if you take this low intensity approach and you're still hitting your adaptation zone, you're hitting your adaptation zone more times throughout the week. Therefore, you're adapting and getting stronger quicker.
Is that the way? Is that your favorite way, or is that the best way? Is to like go start slow and then hit that adaptation phase where you can actually go 3 or 4 times a week, and then you're slowly making changes and getting your body used to it without pushing too hard?
Yeah, this is episode 1 and episode 2 of my podcast. Episode 1 is explaining the adaptation phase. Nice. And the different zones of you want to hit that adaptation sweet spot. And episode 2 is you want to try and hit that sweet spot as often as you can throughout the week that doesn't exceed any adaptation capacity. Because if you exceed that, then the body starts breaking down rather than building up. And so to answer your question, it's like the safest approach. It's my favorite approach if someone is new to running. And it is the safer approach because you're choosing the lower intensity approach to build up. Like you want to build up a nice foundation, like we said before you start doing any intense work. If you're a gym goer and you've been doing gym 3 times a week for the last 12 months, you're going to have like some strength there. You're going to have a really nice baseline, but you're still not going to like you'll adapt really quickly, but you might not have the aerobic adaptation. Like I grew up playing basketball. I grew up like it's short sprints and jumping and landing and like the defense stance, like quick reaction, pivoting, that sort of thing. So I was quite fit. And then I went to endurance running where I thought I was very, very strong, but my calves, my Achilles weren't used to the continuous, like long duration running. It was used to short sprinting, jumping, landing. And so that's why they got really tight and really sore when I first became a runner. And I was strong and I didn't get injured because I had a good baseline, but my body did still need time to adapt. So if you do something different, it's going to, you should know as like a gym goer, if you're used to doing like squats, cleans, deads, lunges, you're totally fine. But then if you go to do something else, like if you do box jumps or like split squats or something that's slightly different to what you're used to, you're going to start feeling sore. You're going to have a different level of soreness. And it's not that you're weak. It's just that you're doing something different. So runners, if you do start running, you do need to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah. Good explanation on that. What kind of people what kind of physiques, what sort of attitudes, what sort of, level of tenacity, like who, give us an idea of who might be a good candidate for making running like a big part of their life?
Interesting. Self-motivated people. They I work with runners all the time, so I understand their personality traits. They are very driven, very self-motivated, very goal-orientated. They love just running a 5K, seeing they can do that, then challenging themselves to a 10K, seeing they can do that, then challenge themselves to a half marathon, full marathon, ultra, and then they just go beyond and they just keep pushing themselves. Some of them strive for that achievement of, like, if there's a medal at the end, some people just love collecting medals, and that's, attributing that. Personality wise, very stubborn. And this is why so many runners do get injured as well. When they catch the bug of running and then they get injured, they just keep running. They keep running through injuries. They often ignore a lot of these pain signals, and it develops into something so much worse. But trying to prevent them from running. I see cyclists as well. Cyclists are the same. You tell them to stop cycling and they're just going to keep cycling. But it's just like a stubborn, self-motivated, driven personality, which can be very good, has like a lot of positive attributes because, you're completing these achievements that you're setting for yourself. You're giving yourself a marathon goal. You're giving yourself a marathon PB, like under 4 hours or under 3 hours, and you're setting up this structure and you're setting up this plan and you're working your way towards that. There's tremendous positive benefits. But then there's also these negative, you could say, attributes. The same thing, like that same competitiveness, that same drive can slowly lead you to over pushing yourself, can lead you to, when you are injured, continuously overdoing it and re-injuring that, returning to running too soon if you are injured and need time off, or just like grinding yourself into the ground and linking that to once they are injured and not running, it has that attachment of feeling like really anxious and really jittery and really wanting to get back. And so there's positives and negatives to that same thing. And in fact, I just did a blog last week on my social media around the link between personality traits and injury, and how there's a very strong correlation between this highly competitiveness, this drive for like this competitive strivings, and the link between that and developing an injury in the future.
Yeah. Well, I totally see it, right? You know, what drives you to excel in running is also what drives you to run too much or too hard or too soon or too fast or too often, right?
Yeah.
Right. I totally get that. I totally get that.
I'd share a bit as well, like with that, there was an article that came out and they did a whole bunch of personality questionnaires where they separated perfectionism into perfectionistic strivings, like those who strive for competitive like attributes, and those who have this perfectionistic concerns, like the concerns around perfectionism, like letting down your teammates or not performing to their own standards and having like a concern around that. They found that those who have this, who rank highly in these perfectionism concerns throughout the questionnaires, they had a 17 times more likelihood of getting injured.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. And I think also, you know, just from what I've seen, I'm thinking about my friend groups and the people that I know that are avid runners that love running. Some of them sort of developed that focus, tenacity, stick-to-itiveness over time. They didn't have it before, but they found running as a way to like express that portion, that aspect of themselves, and that's super inspiring. You know, it's cool because you can see them develop a new way of being and of expressing themselves in the world physically. And you know, I think for most of us that have had one successful run where they didn't get hurt and they got that runner's high, they got that dopamine and endorphin rush where it was like, oh God, this is it. This is why I do this. This feels good. You know, I'm spacing out. Maybe it's the right music or whatever that they sort of lock into, and they just feel like $1,000,000. I think for some, like maybe you can answer this, like is for some, are people like chasing that feeling? Is that sometimes part of the reason why they keep going back to it, because they want that high?
Potentially, like it is what consciously or unconsciously is what gets them coming back. I don't think it does take a bit of time. Like I said, once you adapt and kind of get into this steady state, you're fit enough to get into the steady state of running and not feel like you need to stop, take a breath or stop the legs burning. I think that's when the runner's high is created. So it does take it like, you know, this 6 to 8 weeks of running to experience that. In my experience, I think it's just being out in nature, getting exercise, like getting some fresh air and feeling like you're really in a positive mindset, like you're doing something really positive. And I guess it's what people kind of consider. And a lot of people read about this runner's high, and when they feel good running, they kind of say, this must be it. You know, it's really hard to link to any like positive attributes. But yes, you are releasing endorphins. Yes, you are releasing a lot of hormones in the body. But I think the same could be said for a lot of cardio exercises or exercises, or like gym competitions or something where you find a lot of passion in it and you're exercising in your passion. I think there's a link consciously or unconsciously to want to keep doing it and want to do it more often, and drag your friends in, say it's the best thing ever, like I'm loving this, and they catch the bug. But I see a lot of people catch the cycling bug or like swimming, and not a lot of swimmers. I don't hang out with a lot of swimmers, but yeah, those are just examples of the combination of you're doing something that's releasing a lot of endorphins, you're loving it, and you're contributing to positive health. And it's the story from there.
Yeah. I get the, especially now with us, feeling increasingly isolated. Maybe your gym's closed and you don't have exercise equipment home. You don't have a treadmill inside. Maybe don't have a stationary bike. You don't want to spend the thousands of dollars for a Peloton, system. You probably have a decent pair of shoes and a sweatshirt and a pair of shorts, and you can just
all you need.
Piss off, just piss off. And so I get that. And I think that for a lot of people, it's a good idea because you are out in nature. You are opening up your lungs. You are getting out of the house and doing something for you, and listening to your favorite gangster rap, and just like keeping those legs moving. So I do get it. And I get the draw. Okay. So here's where I get critical.
Hit me.
I don't know of that many runners that are regular runners that are like super fit people. And that, let me say that in a different way. I don't know that many runners that are that have great physiques. They may have the strong legs, they may have, tighter butt, which is awesome. But what I know in my own research, talking to CrossFitters, and, my exercise routine is fairly unique. It's a 10-minute workout. It's a band workout. And I've done episodes with the creator, Dr. John Jaquish of the X3 bar. And he wrote a book called, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. So is cardio. And it points to certain scientific studies that say you hold on to fat when you run. And so of the people that I know that are avid runners, and please don't take this personally, but I did give you fair warning. I've seen a lot of runners that love to run that are soft in the middle, that are kind of skinny fat, or same with cyclists. I mean, how many tight midsections, big giant muscly legs on a cycle, but stuffed into like a sausage into the spandex because they're thick in the middle. And so my thought is, well, as a host of a biohacking podcast and someone, I want to live a long time. I want to have a lot of lean muscle mass. I want to look good naked. I want to work out and get the most from the least. And the criticism is how does that happen? Convince me otherwise that running can turn anyone into sort of a someone who's not gonna, their abs aren't necessarily gonna show. They're gonna hang on to fat because they're in a state of exercise that holds on to that.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess it depends on your definition of physique and fitness, because like we said, the body will adapt and transform into whatever you're putting it through, that being exercise and that being diet as well, like the combination of the two, and several other factors. But if you are wanting to run and only run, your body is going to adapt to becoming a runner. And that doesn't require lifting a lot of weights. It doesn't require getting a six pack. It does require, you will not necessarily lose a lot of weight. I know a lot of people who train for a marathon and they put on weight because they justify eating a whole bunch of stuff. And they say, yeah, I've just ran 2Ks. I deserve that cake, chips and biscuits. It's not, it depends on what you adapt to. It depends on what you put your conditions through, and you won't get strong muscles. You won't get abs if you just do running. I do recommend, if people want to improve running, once they have a really nice baseline and they're really their cardio fitness is quite nice and they want to improve their running, you do need to start doing some strength training. That's all the evidence just points towards strength training to become a better runner. And that's not just doing body weight, high reps. That's doing your 8 to 10 rep max, deadlifts, squats, lunges, calf raises. And To answer your question, whether like the runners are the soft through the middle, they're skinny, they're kind of like this skinny fat. If you want your body to be skinny fat, then that's what's going to do. If you are a runner,
nobody wants their bodies to be skinny fat, but I'm saying people that like become really into running and that becomes their thing. That often I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of class, but it just seems like that happens more frequently.
I would say yes for the recreational runner who doesn't want to be disciplined in their nutrition, who wants to run and only run and just doesn't want to partake in any other form of cross training or gym or strength training, then yes, they will become this like skinny fat person who is a bit flabby in the middle, and they are like aerobically quite fit. They can run and they can run far and they can run for a really good amount because that's what their body's adapted to.
Right.
But in terms of longevity, in terms of like a healthy lifestyle, running might not be the answer. It's not like the be all and end all. And I don't advocate just running is the answer for everyone, because you can easily become a good runner and become like an endurance runner, but still be unhealthy in other aspects.
Right.
And that might be with strength, and that might be with their physique, and that might be with their nutrition and what's going on internally in their organs rather than like what they're seeing on the outside. And they might justify themselves. They'd be like, no, but I'm a runner. I'm lean. All I need to do is run because I know that's the answer for longevity, but that's not the clear case. And I'm always an advocate for cross training and throwing different things at your body, making sure you're a resilient runner. I always talk about resilience being, you want to try and throw different variables at someone and they not break down because you have trained enough with enough variety. I do run. I do also triathlons. So I do swim. I do cycle. I strength train 3 times a week. I have done CrossFit like several months, and I just like being resilient. I like people throwing different things at me and me not breaking down because that's how I see fitness and that's how I try and approach life. So yeah, I guess we're agreeing in the way that we don't think running is the answer. So I guess we're not going to have a heated debate around that.
No, that's cool. No, that's good. Yeah, I'm not hanging to any expectation. But you know, you're the guy. I've got people listening. It's like, dude, Sean's got baggage around running, man. But this is helpful. You know, when you talk about variability and being resilient, does that mean for a runner like running on different surfaces? Does that mean running with inclines and declines? Does that mean run like slow and fast? And where are you on like barefoot running?
Okay, couple of things there. Yes, resilience. There'd be different things depending on what you want to do. Let's just say as a runner, if you wanted to run a marathon where all the marathons are on road and you wanted to get really good at that, then you might want to just adapt to that. However, if you want to be a more well-rounded runner, you're definitely going to have to do different things. Trail running is a big variation in the sport. Some people love trail running, especially once they get into ultras, and that requires being uphill, downhill, different terrains, rocks, hurdling over trees, going around corners at quite a fast speed. So you're changing direction, you're using your muscles differently. You have to sometimes have these like slow endurance stretches, whereas other stretches, they're like a sprint up a hill. That is like, if you want to be that type of runner, then you can run marathons and you can also do trail runs and you can also do short sprinty things. And that's where I prefer, that's where like if you're wanting to reduce your risk of injury and you're wanting to work on like honing on injury prevention, just adapting to different environments is the way to go. If you wanted to try different shoes, you might adapt to those different shoes. I have some runners. Do we record this or is it just audio only?
No, it's video too. Yeah, you're gonna bust out some of your shoes.
Let me show you my shoe.
Yeah.
So most people talk about running support and like having this, making sure this is the shoe I have. It's what we call a zero drop shoe. So there's no height between the heel and the toes. And this is quite flimsy. Like I can just
look at that
fold
thing.
that up like that.
Yeah.
And it can bend quite easily. And like, this is what we call like a minimalist shoe.
Right.
And so almost essentially very, very little support in this, but I do the bulk of my running in that because it's quite light. And I just feel great. And my body, my feet, my Achilles have all adapted to being strong enough to being in those shoes. And so other times, if I want to rest my feet or rest my calves but still want to go for a run, I'd wear my other traditional kind of running shoes that offer a little bit more support, have a little bit more of a heel drop, and there's, I guess, less demand for the calf and Achilles to work in those shoes. And so I've adapted to different types of shoes, and so that's making me more resilient that way as well.
Sure.
I guess if you were to say for like CrossFit workouts, when they just write a workout on the board and it's a whole bunch of different things and something you might not be used to, some you are used to, you're just like being prepared for expecting the unexpected and like preparing for variety. It's kind of like that, and you're less likely to break down if you get kept throw all these different elements at yourself and you keep adapting to those different elements. So yeah, there's that definition of resilient, whether a runner wants to hone in on all that resilience or whether they just want to do those road races and just do the marathon distance and they don't want to deviate from any of that, then you can adapt to that. And they want to run in the same runners, you can adapt to that and still not get injured, but you just need to make sure that if you do deviate, you want to make sure that it's very gradual and very slow. But that's what I would say.
Yeah.
And then you also comment on barefoot running. I don't recommend barefoot running. I run very close to barefoot with those shoes that I do wear.
Yeah.
But actual barefoot running, I don't recommend.
You know what? And yeah, barefoot, no. But like maybe like those 5-finger shoes, or you know, you've seen Rich Roll run in those like looks like flip-flop sandal jobbies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So the concept of barefoot running, yes. I don't recommend it for most runners. I do think if you want to try it, you need to be very, very strong to do it. You need your feet to be extremely strong. You need your calves, Achilles to be extremely strong. Those type of 5 fingers, they're essentially just there to mimic barefoot running, but there is essentially just a fabric sole layer just to protect you from abrasions and scrapes and the harshness of the ground. It will hurt if you step on like a stone or if you step on like a twig or something, but you just won't get scraped and bruised and blistered. So if you did want to do that, it's not going to reduce your risk of injury if you do have bare feet. If you do this barefoot running, it's not going to necessarily increase your performance. You will adapt like a slowly different type of stride. There was a book that came out, Born to Run, which was a heavy advocate for barefoot running, and it had a whole bunch of studies and had a whole bunch of advocates and professionals talking about the benefits of barefoot running, but it doesn't stack up when you consider all the available evidence that is out there. There's a little bit of cherry picking going on, and I trust that a runner, like if they wanted to become a barefoot runner, they can do it. If they want to do it and thrive in it, you can do it. But it's convincing yourself of what it's actually achieving. You're not reducing your risk of injury and you're not increasing your running performance. So just be mindful of that, I guess.
Yeah. Good. What's the most common? This is more criticisms. Thank you for indulging me. What's the most common injury associated with running?
I would usually see, like science would say, the most affected joint is the knee. It's a really, like if I was any joint in the body, I wouldn't want to be the knee. It's like really unfortunate that you've got this hip and you've got this foot. The foot makes contact with the ground, is influenced by the ground. The hip is where most of like the force is generated, and the knee meets in the middle and kind of is amplified. The force that is generated through the knee is amplified by what's happening at those two factors, and it just cops a lot of load. It cops a lot of the brunt, and the like if there's any spike in load, usually the knee is the first one to cop it, which is just unfortunate. But the ones that I tend to see in my clinic would be what we call this proximal hamstring tendinopathy, which is like a condition where the the tendon very high up on the hamstring, so almost on the sitting bone where it attaches on the sitting bone, that gets affected, and also plantar fasciitis are the two main ones that I see with online physio, because they persist. If you mismanage it, it doesn't get better on its own. And so people have this for months, several months, sometimes years, and they're so frustrated. And that's usually when they come to me for like advice. They're like, they've tried everything, and then they're like, Brodie, what can we do?
Yeah.
So they're the two conditions I mainly see. But if you look at the research and they have a look at prevalence studies and what is most affected, usually it's the knee.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've seen mostly with, not just in my soccer career and soccer life, but with the runners, with adult runners, grown men who enjoy it, love it, do it a lot, are cognizant of nutrition, but it just seems like a matter of time before they develop it. And they would probably benefit from resting more. They would probably benefit from going slower. They, like all these things that you're suggesting.
I should clarify as well, when I'm talking about knee pain, like the most common condition around the knee is usually what we call patellofemoral pain, which could be, I guess, loosely described as kneecap pain, like pain around the kneecap. I'm definitely not talking about any osteoarthritic changes like osteoporosis, osteoarthritis, those sort of things. That's definitely not common in runners. It's actually the least prevalent condition compared to like a sedentary individual. Those who don't exercise actually they're 3 times more likely to get osteoarthritis in their knees, whereas recreational runners actually are more resilient with getting that sort of condition. But things like ITB, friction syndrome, things like patellofemoral pain, they're quite common, and they're just mainly affected around the knee, which is just doing too much too soon.
Yeah, right. What's a running myth that's really popular that's wrong? What do people think about running? What are their criticisms about running, or what are their assumptions about running that are really common that just are BS?
Yeah, I guess following the same lines would be like the prevalence of osteoarthritis, because they think they've been told by doctors or professionals that osteoarthritis is due to wear and tear, and the cause of it is due to like just doing too much to the body. And when you look at running and you look at how a runner runs, you're saying, okay, look, it's a highly repetitive action. They're contacting the ground thousands and thousands of times. It's ground reaction force through the body, and eventually the joint is going to start breaking down. The condition of the arthritis, the cartilage that's on the ends of the bones is finite. It only takes a certain amount of repetitions, a certain amount of pounding the pavement before it starts to break down, and that's what's believed. And someone might go to a doctor and say, look, I've got knee pain. I ran a marathon on the weekend and now it's just really sore. And the doctor says, why the hell are you running? Running's bad for your knees. You're going to cause osteoarthritis, and maybe you should try doing something else. Maybe you're not designed to be a runner. Maybe you're too old to be a runner. And so these beliefs get created within the global consciousness, and that's what they think. They think that osteoarthritis is this really static kind of wear and tear condition, when in fact, when we look at the research, we look at prevalence studies, and we look at what actually causes arthritis, we know that shock through the ground, like ground reaction forces, actually stimulate bone growth and actually stimulate cartilage generation. And what we're actually doing as a runner, like runners are usually lighter, so they're looking after their weight a little bit more. They're not obviously overweight, obese, which would increase the likelihood of osteoarthritis. So they're lighter on their feet. They're usually stronger around the knees because they've been pounding the pavement for quite a long time. So they're usually stronger around the joints, and they've been used to hitting the ground and sending this shock generated force through the body and stimulating cartilage growth. And so the cartilage itself isn't finite. It's a living, growing thing like every other organ and every other muscle joint in the body. And it doesn't just break down as a continuous trend. It does rejuvenate, regenerate. And that's why we see in massive amounts of studies that look at prevalent studies of osteoarthritis, why these recreational runners are less likely to get osteoarthritis compared to, say, a sedentary individual.
Yeah, makes sense. You don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, I've got plenty of other misconceptions if we want to dive into them.
Yeah, what's another good one?
Some of the most common is people think that stretching, particularly static stretching, will reduce their risk of injury or increase their running performance, which the science shows is incorrect. So a lot of runners come to me and they say, look, I've got this knee pain, I've got this plantar fasciitis, I've had a history of hip issues, and I know I don't stretch enough. I know that I should be stretching more, and that's why I'm getting injured. And the evidence just doesn't show that. In fact, this is one of the reasons, and one of the episodes in my podcast why I try and highlight this concept is because a lot of runners don't like stretching and they just want to run. And so they avoid stretching. And when they're injured, they think it's because they're not stretching is why they're getting injured, when in fact, it's probably something to do within their training. It's probably something, maybe they're doing too much too soon. Maybe they're running too often. Maybe they're under recovering. Maybe they're not sleeping well. Maybe their nutrition is poor. And maybe they are the real reasons why they're getting injured, but they're not looking at those reasons because they think stretching is the cause.
Sure.
And they're not going to stretch because they don't like stretching, but they're continuously getting injured because they believe that this is true.
Right.
When in fact, if we look at studies and we look at, if we try and correlate certain factors and we do stretching studies and we try and see, do they increase performance? Does it reduce the risk of injury? The evidence just doesn't stack up.
Good one. Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. Are you a fan of foam rollers and rolling out the ball of your foot, or those like U-shaped two-handled plastic jobbies that you run on the top, over the top of your leg? Like, does that is that case by case, person to person, exertion by exertion, kind of depends on your body?
I would say it is based on the individual. If it feels good for them and if they feel like it's doing something, then go for it. Like I did a whole month on recovery throughout December, where I had all these experts on to talk about recovery. If I were to kind of do a blanket statement, foam rollers, massage balls, any sort of thing that's rolling the body doesn't do much. It doesn't do anything physically for recovery. It might do something mentally for you. Like if you're paying attention to recovery strategies, then physically not doing a lot. You're not increasing your blood flow. You're not releasing trigger points. You're not lengthening anything. You're just pushing something down on your muscles and rolling it around so it hurts. But you are paying attention to that area. You're probably
giving it some love, that placebo effect.
You're unwinding, you're mentally unwinding, you're de-stressing, which kind of flips a switch and turns your body into this recovery mode. You're probably going to sleep a little bit better because you've paid attention to that area. The same can be said for massage. Like massage fits in this same component. You're not increasing blood flow when it comes to massage. You're not releasing trigger points. We don't know what it's doing a lot of times, but what we do know is it has very psychological benefits. You do feel better after a massage. You might lay down on the table with back pain and you might get up off that table feeling amazing afterwards. We don't know what it's doing physically. There's a lot of evidence to show what it's not doing, but the real benefits, they're totally real. And whether you're finally paying attention to this area, whether you're like laying down that table and it's like, it feels nice to have someone like hit those points. It feels nice to have someone paying attention to that area. You feel like you're doing good. Then you feel great when you get up off the table. There's real things to be said for that. And that's if it feels good for you. If you sit down at a table, you're like, oh God, I should be doing something else. You're constantly looking at your watch. You're like, oh, this hurts. I don't really like this. And then you're getting up not feeling much better. Don't do it.
Yeah.
And if foam rolling, like if you have a physical or mental benefit from foam rolling, then do it. I'm not going to tell you not to. Same with stretching. I'm not going to tell you not to. But yeah, we need to be realistic around what is the real benefits of recovery, why you are getting injured. We need to start illuminating, highlighting these points of reality, what's actually going on, so that you can make smarter training decisions and reduce your risk of injury based on science as well.
Yeah. There's a concept that's come up with lots of different guests, this idea of Enteroception, where you know what's going on inside of your body. You don't need a tracker as much. You don't need a biometric tracker as much as you need to like listen to yourself. Like, where's the pain? Well, if you follow that pain, where does it go? What does it feel like when you make this motion? You know, when you're about to go to sleep, how ready are you to sleep? Like, having this inner sense of where you're at physically and inside your body, where's the pain coming from? That means more than anything else. And if you're just lamenting, if you're just in misery while you're foam rolling, you know, your hamstring out and it sucks and it hurts and you're like, no, I just got to charge through it because this is what I'm supposed to do. You're saying, don't do it. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say listening to your body in most cases is like, it's pretty good. A lot of these misconceptions, however, they kind of make intuitive sense. Like there's, if we're talking about stretching, like stretching, if you've got an injury and when you stretch that area, it kind of feels sore but good. And then you're paying attention to that area, but it just doesn't really do much, but you do it anyway because it feels good in the moment, maybe has relief for a couple of minutes afterwards. That might lead you astray if you look week by week and see that's not getting any better, but in the moment, it might feel a little bit better. So yes, listen to your body, but listen to your body in the moment, but also listen to your body day by day, listen to your body week by week, and then see what the go is there.
Yeah.
Especially like if someone has chronic pain, which is totally probably off topic to this podcast, but if someone has chronic pain, we probably can't listen to their body.
Yeah.
There's like a fault in their pain signals. And so they're probably saying things are going wrong. This is our alert system, when in fact it might be something completely different. So that might be a little bit of an exception to the internal processes of listening to the body.
Yeah, good call. Well, this has been interesting. I'm fascinated by runners. I'm inspired by runners. And maybe
I don't think I've convinced you to start running though.
Well, you know, it's funny. When I go, I'm not good at going slow. I'm either going hard. You know, my buddy came over and he's like, hey, we're going to go for a run. And that's like, we're going to, what? Yeah, just grab your shoes. We're going to go. And he's like, I'm trying to hit an 8-minute mile. So we're going to do 3.1 and I'm trying to get under an 8-minute mile. And I was like, okay, well, you set the pace. And then we got out there and I set the pace because I don't know how to slow down. And so I pushed myself really hard and I was sore for a couple of days afterward, but I felt really good and I slept like $1,000,000 that night. You know, I got great cardio, like my lungs burnt. I really exhausted myself. But I think that my body, for whatever reason, my body is just not really, it's not attuned to it. Notice how I didn't say it's not meant for it. It's just not adjusted for it. And it's always been something that I've hated to do. So I think that there's still time for me. I may, 10 years from now, I may decide that I'm going to make running my thing. But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the conversation and I have a lot of respect for runners because doing anything that consistently and with that much commitment and devotion, and you got the gear and you got the trackers and you're like really striving for excellence is super inspiring to me. Like I mentioned his name before on this podcast, but Rich Roll, I just think that he's like such a cool dude. I'm not into vegetarianism. I'm not into veganism, but I respect the grind and he looks great. And he's really pushed himself to the limits of human performance. And I am definitely interested and fascinated by that. So,
and there's something to be said. I think runners, particularly once they get to the ultra distances and particularly trail runners, this is probably just my speculation, but they seem to be nice people. They seem to be like really friendly, like helping each other out. They seem to be like really, really nice people. Whereas cyclists, they're just like these angry, like entitled people. I don't know what it is. I'm a cyclist as well, but like they just seem to be angry all the time. And runners, trail runners, they just love a good beer. They love like just spending time out in nature, and they just love encouraging people and getting people involved.
Yeah. Maybe it's when those cyclists aren't ever touching the ground, right? They're going to go for hours without their feet touching the ground. But a runner, they're committed to it, and especially in those shoes that you showed me. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see just how thin those soles were. Yeah, that's very cool. Well, where can people learn more about you? Can you tell them all your social handles and the podcast one more time before I ask the final question?
Sure. So my podcast is the Run Smarter podcast. I do highly recommend, if you're interested in what we talked about today, have a listen to the first 10 episodes of that podcast. It goes through the universal principles of overcoming, preventing injury, which we touched on some of those examples today. I'm quite active on Instagram. Run Smarter Series is my handle. And I guess we could take it there. I do offer online physiotherapy if people are injured. Breakthroughrunning.physio is my website. But I highly recommend trying to learn yourself and trying to get this control and like self-educate before like going straight to a health professional to see. Like I really love those who come to me eventually for physio, but they've already got all these concepts in place. They already understand all these concepts and misconceptions, and I highly advocate that being their approach. So head to the podcast if you're a runner and you want to learn to train smarter, and then see maybe you can sort it all out yourself.
I like it. Very cool. Very cool. So this is the final question that I ask. It's a fill in the blank question, designed specifically to catch you off guard. You can spend as much time, you can expand as little or as much as you'd like. And this can be based on anything that you know. This can be specific to running or life or whatever. But if you would fill in the blank, everyone would benefit from knowing.
That's it? From knowing the concept, I want to say adaptation, knowing how to adapt to the body, but I guess we'll probably discuss that today. So it's not really that providing a lot of wisdom, is it? I guess when it comes, do you have like business people on the podcast?
Sure.
Do you have?
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to creating content and like doing a business, which is something I've always strived towards, having like giving people information, like giving people all the information that they need and that they can sort out themselves. And the concept of like, oh, I'll teach you half of it and you can learn the second half if you purchase my product or something like that is really salesy, really cheesy. So if a lot of people learned how to just deliver content in a genuine way and deliver the whole content, because people are going to find it elsewhere. The internet's like massive. They're going to find the answers eventually. But if you give everyone everything, then when they do require additional answers, you're going to be their go-to person to ask. They're going to be the first person you're the first person they think of when they want additional information or answers or something. So if someone is a content creator or a business owner, one thing I really hold true and what's really helped me is just to be authentic and just tell everyone everything you know, and then you'll be their first go-to person. So how's that?
That's wonderful. I love that. That's really great advice. That's totally true. That's totally true. Yeah, that's well done. That's the first answer like that I've gotten. That was great, Brodie. Yeah, that was cool. Well, this has been great. I have a new respect, and I do have a fresh perspective on how to run correctly, how to run smarter. And I think my time will come. I mean, anything to get me out of the house at this time.
I have a lot of people that start running in like their 50s, 60s, and maybe you're in that little category.
Yeah, maybe 20 years from now, I'm just gonna pick it up and I'll hit you up when I do.
Yeah, no doubt I'll still be doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah. Well, Brodie, I really appreciate you, and thanks for joining me today on the Optimal Performance Podcast.
Thanks, Sean. Had a lot of fun.
And scene. Excellent.